Good morning. We are on to Chapter 10, Interpersonal Communication in Sport. This chapter happens to be our longest chapter in the entire text, so what I've done is I've split the presentation for this chapter into two separate presentations. So you'll have two separate ed puzzles, you'll have two separate sets of questions, and you will have two separate assignments related to this chapter. I'm going to start this chapter with a little bit of a story, right? The chapter Interpersonal Communication, it relies heavily on youth sports and parents and coaches. And then towards the back end, it gets into fans and, kind of what fans say on the sidelines and whatnot. But I'll start with a coaching story, right? Those of you that don't know me, right, I've coached track and field for probably 9 or 10 years now. But prior to coaching track and field, I also coached basketball on several different levels. So probably this story goes back 12 to 13 years, something along those lines, and I was coaching a AAU basketball team at a tournament. And we had a young athlete, very talented. Normally, he would have been a starter on our boys program. I think he missed a homework assignment, something along those lines. And we told him that he would not be starting or playing at all in the first half because he had gotten in trouble in school. So he would not play in the first half. So we go down to this tournament over the weekend, and it was probably about a 90-minute drive. And we did exactly what we said, where we didn't start him. Well, after, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes into the first quarter, the young athlete's not playing. Well, the dad, who was an avid basketball fan, yells to his son, "Hey, get your shit, we're leaving." Right? So, sure enough, the dad, this is in the middle of the game, by the way. He walked across the court. I should have added that. He walked across the court, told his son, grab his things, we're leaving. The officials weren't really sure what was going on. The son was a little confused, and I guess the whole point of this chapter is kind of looking at the effects that both coaches, fans, and parents have on their son or daughters, the impact, I should say, on their son or daughters, really everything, their participation in sports, their confidence, self-efficacy. Think about what kind of his son was going through at this point, whether it was embarrassment, the example he was setting for his son in terms of participation. And I can tell you guys right now, this story gets even worse, where in private, the father came up to both myself and my assistant coach, and the words that came out of his mouth were, "I would hit you right now, but I'm scared you would call the cops." Yes, this is 6th grade AAU basketball, by the way. So, the chapter paints a picture, if you read the chapter, of how sports rage is a real thing, and how it's actually pretty common. And it's extremely common, guys. I mean, that's just one story. I've got several other stories. Very, very common in sports. So let's jump in we'll start with changing sports culture. And I think it's important to recognize, you guys are all 20, give or take. The sports world and sports culture has changed in the United States, where we've went from what we call a game culture versus a sport culture. So think back to when you started playing sports, 5 years old, 7 years old, whatever it was, right? The truth is, we played sporting-like things because we probably just liked having fun, right? We came up with these random arbitrary games. I'm going to see how many I can make in a row, or I'm going to see how long I could hop on one foot while dribbling a basketball. I don't know. When you were a kid, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you came up with these random games and this is what we call game culture, where children were responsible for creating rules and partaking events. Game culture was very different than what's becoming much more and more prevalent, which is sport culture, where organizations and parents are responsible for creating the rules and partaking in events. So if we think back to, I don't know, the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, organized youth sports were not really a thing. They weren't commonplace like they are today. as you advance towards the 1990s and 2000s, right, organized youth sports start to become much more popular, and we start to shift where in the 1970s and 80s, what did we do? Well, as a kid, you would go out and hang out with your friends and you say, hey, maybe you guys want to play a pickup basketball game? Do you want to play some baseball? Do you want to play little games like running bases, whatever it is, right? This has been shifted where now, right, you have AAU organizations, you have travel soccer organizations that have kids as young as 5 and 6 years old partaking in these very, very structured tournaments, very, very structured training clinics, right? So again, it's no longer, the onus is no longer on the children. The organizations or the parents are all of a sudden pushing kids into sports. So it's extremely different from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s to now. And it's really this change. A lot of people don't realize this change has really come over the last 20 to 30 years. All right. So like I said, it's been a paradigm shift. The game culture, which was, again, the onus was on the children and the kids, was really focused on having fun. We did it because we had fun, right? And we did it because we, as parents, right, we wanted to put our kids into just a wide array of sports, expose them to different things, right? The newer sporting culture, right, is less focused on fun and is more focused on skill development and competitiveness. And I'm not saying these are terrible things, but I mean, it really depends on what age group we're talking about. If you're talking about a 7 and 8 year olds, yes, skill development and competitiveness should not be the number one priority, right? So one of the reasons that this has happened is because sports has become monetized, completely monetized. And AAU is the greatest example, right? I don't know what it costs nowadays, but an AAU sports team could be $2, $3, maybe $4,000 for like a 3 or 4 month season that gets you to maybe 6 to 8 tournaments, right? Basketball used to be a winter sport. Baseball used to be a spring sport. Soccer and football used to be fall sports. These have now changed, right? Soccer year-round, basketball year-round, baseball year-round, spring ball, fall ball. In addition to this, there are countless clinics, right? Or special clinics, whatever it is. What do they call the football things? Football showcases. They have football showcases for like 10-year-olds, right? If you guys have no idea what it is, it's basically like a college or a sporting organization running like just a special camp is what a showcase is. And they're trying to showcase their skills, so to speak, for whatever reason, typically to get into a good college, right? This has all been monetized. And in many situations, it's organizations or people trying to make a buck, right? Now, this has changed, right? This has changed, like I said. You have to specialize in sports now if you want to be competitive. And then as a parent, right, the privatization of it has really forced you to do it year-round. And in addition, as a parent, like if you want to be that good parent, you have to allow them to do basketball year-round, soccer year-round, because if you don't, you're that bad parent, right? The good example would be something like a cell phone, right? Well, if every other kid in the class has a cell phone, you're supposed to get your kid a cell phone, okay? So then we get into kind of this just in general, what societies and cultures and subcultures tend to do. And what any society tends to do is you try to aim your members of your society for survival and inevitably success within your culture. And this is whatever. It doesn't just have to be sports, it's anything, right? So during this process, you're trying to transfer various things like your cultural norms, your practices, your routines, your beliefs, your general knowledge. You're trying to transfer all of these things to your new members. So in this situation, when we're talking about a sporting culture, our new members are the kids, and we're trying to transfer standard routine practices, general knowledge about things to the kids. How does this take place? Well, typically through one of two ways. One is simply exposure to the sport, putting them in the event, whatever it is. The other is reinforcement from others, and this could be parents, coaches, peers, right? But we really have to figure out, what are we teaching to our youth? And secondly would be, why are we teaching it? Okay. So parents, right, have these perceived benefits for children in sports, right? So we outline 4, and there are many. This is what the textbook outlines, right? 1 is teaching life skills, and I think this is a great one, right? We teach life skills of how to cope with adversity, whatever it is. 2 is engaging with other children, developing, and that's why this section is called sports socialization, developing skills to work with others, promoting health, and then 4 would be sense of community. Now, and again, this is what parents perceive the benefits of sports are for children. Parents, in addition, have these perceived benefits for themselves when they push their kids into sports, right? So you could see a change in parent behavior where all of a sudden a parent is more involved with their kid. So maybe a parent who works a lot all of a sudden starts coaching their kid. Other things are cognition, affect. You could be a relatively flat personality, but all of a sudden when you get into that role of court coaching or being a fan of your son or daughter, this changes your overall affect for the positive. And then third would be relationships. This can enhance and again, it could be potentially negative for a relationship with your son or daughter. It could be enhance a relationship with your significant other. It could enhance your relationship with officials or people in the community. Now, the book then outlines 5, right, motivations for the child or athlete, like why they would partake in sport and what do they recognize as a reason for why they partake. 1 is affiliation, right? We say we partake in sports because we want to have fun. 2 is achievement, right? It feels good to accomplish things, whether it's as simple when you're like a 2-year-old as hitting a ball off the tee or catching a touchdown pass, right? We like those achievements, or it could be as big as winning a state championship, right? 3 is a release. 4 is power. We can have this great sense of, I don't want to use power to describe it, but self-efficacy, right? Where we have this innate belief in our ability to do things through sport. And then 5 is independence. You really learn that you can accomplish certain things without the help of others. So there are not only benefits to athletes partaking in sports and parents pushing their kids to sports. There are some challenges. Most notably, the 2 biggest are money and time. And money has been noted to be the bigger challenge that parents are now facing with year-round sports. And really it's becoming, the mantra here is pay to play, where again, AAU basketball could be a couple $1,000s. If you look at, dance could be a couple $1,000 commitment. And then beyond money, the time commitment. Sometimes, teams could practice, youth teams could practice as late as 9 p.m. and go till 10:30 p.m. We're talking about like 6th or 7th graders practicing until 10:30 p.m. And this could be, after a full day of school, after doing homework, right? So time commitment can be very challenging for both parents and the kids. Now, children also seem to find challenges as well. And again, there's many more, but the 2 that the book outlines are the child. Again, view it from a youth athlete. We're not talking like 16, 17, 18. We're talking younger here, right? They have trouble balancing between being a child and seriousness of sport. At what age do you start to go from just having fun to being more focused on winning? That's not an easy question to answer, right? At what age do you make that change? At what age, as a coach, again, because at the end of the day, like, you guys aren't just going to be parents in this class, you're going to be coaches. At what age do you start to only put your best lineup into a game, right? And certain athletes might get 0 playing time. Is it 7, 8? Are we talking 13, 14, 15? I don't know. So I don't have a good answer for you. Another challenge is the more obvious that some of you have probably experienced, is the detraction from academics, where you're not focused on your academics. So as we know, we've said it in this class, if you're in my kinesiology class, parents have a profound impact on the child's experiences and then inevitably how they interpret these experiences, right? They shape the perceptions about child's abilities. I mean, self-efficacy is a massive one. It establishes expectations about what's important. Is winning important, or is happiness important? And this is going to be one of your assignments, talking about happiness. They also help establish the bonding within the sport. It could be bonding with a child and their coach. It could be a child and their friend. And a parent helps supports these things. If a parent is constantly criticizing the coach, right, the child is not going to have a strong bond with the coach. If a parent is constantly criticizing another athlete on the team because, I don't know, they're dribbling too much, or they are not passing the ball, or they're not following their blocking assignment, right? It's going to be hard for that athlete to bond with other people in the sport, right? So encouraging parents should be doing really one of four things: emphasizing goals, emphasizing improvement and how much they've improved, emphasizing the importance of trying and putting forth a good effort, and then finally, rewards for hard work. Let's move to the next slide where we talk about parental support versus parental pressure, right? So obviously we want to lean towards the parental supportive side of things. We have 5 aspects of parental support: effort, character traits, physical skill, attention to others, like being a good sport, and then simply having fun. These are 5 ways that a parent can emphasize or at least touch on different aspects of parental support. Now, parental pressure, conversely, can lead to these things like fear of failure, guilt, anxiety, stress, or increased dropout rates. Again, one of your assignments is going to kind of be reflecting on how potentially a parent could have influenced Elena Delle Donne, a WNBA basketball player, and their success or their anxiety and dropout in a sport. All right, so come back to these when you're looking at your assignment for the week. Now, there's private family settings, and this is important for you guys to know, again, from a parent perspective, from an athlete perspective, but also from a coaching perspective, right? So there's this German study that found like when it's appropriate to have certain conversations or what comes up during private family conversations. The number one most common thing that comes up during private family conversations is playing time, and that shouldn't really surprise anybody. And it comes back to how you word these conversations with children, right? The next thing is sporting politics, saying, a coach favors another athlete. So if you're a coach, I think it's very important. It's very important to kind of realize that these conversations come up relatively frequently, right? So a good example is the track and field coach, someone that I work with. It's of course you have people that you enjoy working with, but it's important to not let everyone else know that that is your favorite athlete to work with, right? Or that's your favorite client to work with, right? And because what'll happen is other people, like parents, will start to be critical of these things if you're continuously praising that one athlete. And that's kind of one aspect sports politics can one way it can come into play. Negative coaching behavior. So if you're a coach, right, and you are constantly critical of the athlete in a negative way, right, this is a conversation that a parent will inevitably have with their athlete, saying, oh, the coach shouldn't do that. The coach should not say that. The coach should not act that way, right? And the last one is sport competitiveness, right? Sideline interaction. All right, I think this is our last slide or second to last slide. 45% of sports fans find parental involvement as a problem, right? We've all probably seen it if you've been involved. There's that 1 or 2 or 3 parents that are just loudmouthed and generally saying nothing productive whatsoever, right? The text kind of outlines in a description sideline comments from parents, right? In a study, they found that 51% of comments were positive. Okay, positive, good. But 1/3 of comments were negative, saying, don't do that, you shouldn't do that, run faster, try harder, things that come from a negative light. And that is a lot, right? That's a lot. This can lead to, again, a decrease in self-efficacy, a decrease in confidence. It could lead to embarrassment. So as a coach, I do think it is important for you to kind of look at these things, or as a parent to obviously be aware of these things, and potentially have a conversation with the parent. Again, it has to be approached in a very careful manner. All right, so your assignment: read the case study, The Ride Home. Right, address questions 1 through 3. For question number 2, right? So the case study does mention Elena Delle Donne, a professional WNBA player. I want you to provide an example of another known college or professional athlete who, in your opinion, had lost their passion for the sport. It could be your opinion. If it is your opinion, give me an example of why you think they lost the passion. But there's plenty of stories out there that, or videos out there of athletes simply stating that they've lost the passion for whatever reason. I also want you to watch the documentary that I'm going to link for ESPN Outside the Lines video of Elena Delle Donne. For this, I want you to count how many times the word love and how many times the word happy appear. Right? So not total. How many times love, how many times happy appear in this documentary? Pretty simple. Just write them down. Check. Tally them down. And then after reporting these numbers, what I want you to just write is, how might some of the concepts that we've discussed up to this point in this chapter have influenced Elena Delle Donne's path? Right? Could be negative, could be positive, but think about some of these concepts and think about what her parents could have, right, said or done, or what her coaches could have said or done that set her on this path, right? And again, there's no right or wrong answer, but I want you to very specifically reference things from the text, okay? As always, if you have any questions, let me know.